Story 1. My brother used to be in a Homestuck Facebook group. One prominent member was made an admin and immediately removed all the other admins' permissions, turned off everyone's ability to post except for herself, and flooded the group with Danny Phantom-themed content. I didn't even witness it, and I will never think of Danny Phantom the same way. Story 2. I joined a neighborhood association for the local dog park. The board had become stagnant as people moved away. I joined and managed to reinvigorate the board chair and the city to hold new elections so we could access a pool of funds that the city had but could not let us access due to bureaucracy. We held the election and I became the new vice chair. However, right from the start, the chair began berating city employees about various issues, sending unpleasant emails, and behaving inappropriately. So I decided to leave. I did not sign up to yell at city workers over what day of the week they mow the grass at the dog park. Story 3. I took my children out of Scouts after 4 meetings. They did not enjoy it as I did at their age. It felt more like homework now than it did when I was a child, and it has become quite expensive. Story 4. I joined the group late and always felt like a third wheel. There was no specific tipping point. I was just tired of it. Story 5. I was in a fraternity in college. There was no hazing or inappropriate behavior. We were known as the fraternity where you would feel safe bringing your younger sister. Yes, we had fun and enjoyed ourselves, but we maintained high academic standards, avoided scandals, and upheld respect and conduct as our core values. After graduating, I rejoined as a member of the Alumni Board of Trustees. Within a year, one of the members received a no-contact order from the university due to a sexual assault allegation made by a student. Although she did not file criminal charges, many survivors of sexual assault do not due to fear of reprisal, whether social or otherwise. The fraternity initiated expulsion proceedings against him. This incident had occurred shortly after another case in which the fraternity had expelled a member without hesitation. This time, despite more substantial evidence, they chose not to expel him. I was outraged. The chapter advisor advised me not to make things harder for them. I quit, reported the situation to headquarters, and resigned my membership. The fraternity is no longer active, not due to my report, but because of incidents of hazing. It appears that once bad behavior is allowed, it becomes difficult to contain it. Story 6. For me, it was a board game group which you could call a club. We were quite enthusiastic and played advanced games, and we all had fun. It was not uncommon to enjoy a few beers or some wine while playing. However, this escalated. Over time, people started to drink more and more, and many became quite drunk after only half a game was played. The new normal became that we never finished any game because people became overly intoxicated before that. Sure, drinking and socializing can be enjoyable, but this was not the way I preferred to do it. It just felt like an excuse to escape from something. I apologize if my English is not perfect. It is not my first language. Story 7. I was once in a guild for an online multiplayer game. The guild members became good friends over the years, to the point where we attended a few of each other's weddings. At some point, the game made a change that affected our enjoyment. We held a meeting to discuss how to transition to another game or explore alternative activities to maintain our friendships. I remember someone saying, "Let's be honest. We won't keep doing this, and that's okay." We all walked away and haven't spoken since. Story 8. I was on a podcast that gained popularity and featured a well-known Los Angeles comedian. They asked me to record a statement so they could use it as a soundbite whenever they wanted. Story 9. My son was receiving private tennis lessons that were quite affordable. The coach would allow the players he was coaching before my son to join in during my son's time. This is acceptable if they are playing against each other, but my son was waiting to hit the ball and then getting back in line. The situation worsened when 3 other players joined the line for 20 minutes during a 40-minute practice. Story 10. My old kickboxing club had its issues. The instructor merged the under 18 and over 18 classes to reduce his teaching hours, increased the session prices, and became irritated when I asked if the club was doing well. Toward the end, he spent more time chatting with his students' mothers than teaching. That grunt he gave me when I arrived really made it clear that I, his last serious student, was no longer welcome. Enjoy your martial arts school and your recent weight gain. Story 11. I left an overlanding group after disagreeing with the dues policy. It was only $25, but I asked how much was allocated to our local chapter. None of it was used for that purpose. All of it supported an online forum. This seemed odd since we were gathering at various breweries and participating in cleanups. None of the dues covered food, lunches, or events. Story 12. I umpired baseball for 21 years. I quit when the league manager decided she could influence our calls. Story 13. Someone I knew changed their personality to become a supporter of Donald Trump, and gradually, the online friend group drifted apart as they no longer wanted to engage in that conversation. Story 14. I stopped trying with a friend group when they snubbed my child's graduation party. We all hung out loosely and weren't very close, but we would get together for a bowling night or an occasional cookout. When my child's graduation came, not a single one of them RSVP'd or acknowledged him. Some had been in his life for nearly a decade. I ignored the times they shared pictures of gatherings on social media that didn't include me. After my child's graduation, I decided to stop trying. Story 15. I discovered that my old high school friends had a separate group chat where they organized bi-weekly meetups to play games after a lunch I arranged. Story 16. I only want to be friends with people who want to be friends with me, with those who can prioritize me at least sometimes. I learned that I was just a warm body fitting into friend slot C for them. All they wanted was a yes person, and I couldn't be my authentic self around them to meet that expectation. They only wanted 2 feet and a heartbeat. When I was going through tough times and needed support, they disappeared. People I had known for over 20 years. It was hard to overcome the sunk cost fallacy, but I would rather have real friends, even if there are fewer of them, than a group of insincere friends. Story 17. The charity I worked with went completely off the rails. It started with trying to help pit bulls and aggressive breeds by providing training and veterinary care for spaying and neutering. However, it ended up becoming an LGBTQ activist organization. I support that cause as well, but it's not what I signed up for. Additionally, they had no financial transparency. Story 18. I started going to a club where we enjoyed brunch together and worked on personal and professional goals. It was lovely until the organizers began promoting a course they had taken, which they claimed completely changed their lives. I feel I narrowly avoided joining a cult. Story 19. When you walk into a book club and people are confused that you brought a book, thinking that you were going to read instead of talk. Story 20. After 3 years of clubs and parties, mostly drinking with random groups, it gets old. The same story with different people and the same kind of experiences happen, and it's just not fun anymore. Now, I mostly stay at home playing games. Story 21. I mentally quit my job on the first day when I realized how rude the other employees were to each other. I came from a friendly work environment at my previous job, having moved across the country for this position. However, people at this job seemed adversarial from the beginning. No one greeted each other. There was never a hello or acknowledgement outside of direct work groups. I felt I had made a big mistake. Eventually, I figured out that management had purposely pitted groups against each other. There was a definite pecking order and infighting. It wasn't for me, so I left after 5 months. Story 22. During COVID, I had a group of acquaintances that would play Mario Kart 8 online every Tuesday night for about an hour. We would chat through a Discord channel, and it was fun at first until some players started taking it too seriously. One person would win every race and had around 4,000 hours in the game. It was basically all she did, and she was no fun to play against. Another player would throw a fit every time he was hit by an item, especially if someone threw an item behind them while passing the finish line. We were made aware that he was autistic before starting this, but over time it became less enjoyable. I still love Mario Kart 8 though. Story 23. I was apparently in a ChatGPT-generated cult. The leader did just enough editing and social manipulation on his posts to get us all invested without us realizing it was generated by ChatGPT. But then he became complacent. One day he completely changed direction, angering everyone. Most people began joining a splinter group that someone was forming behind the back of the original cult leader, and finally he made a critical mistake. He left, ChatGPT says in one of his posts, and multiple people took screenshots of it. I'm still struggling with how instantly devastating that one simple line was. The whole worldview that this man and a group of friends had built up just shattered. What about the friends from the cult, you ask? My friends who aren't currently in a cult staged an intervention for me to cut off the last remaining friends in the splinter group after they reviewed how they were trying to manipulate me about the new cult and decided there was a reason I had a mental breakdown in recent days. Fun times. I have a unique hatred of ChatGPT abuse and I am now on a wait list for therapy. Story 24. One of the newer members started trying to politicize everything, which caused friction and annoyed those who just wanted to talk about and enjoy the hobby. It also created a rift where the actual hobbyists decided to split off and form a new group to continue their hobby, leaving the activist crowd to do their own thing. I left with them. We still regularly hang out and play Warhammer, while the other group imploded due to infighting after a few months. Sometimes it's acceptable to simply enjoy fantasy, lore, kit bashing, painting miniatures, and gaming without trying to incorporate real-world issues into the mix. Story 25. I was in a motorcycle club and left after everyone got involved with the same woman. It may have been my wife or someone else, but when I realized we were all just part of a harem for these sex-crazed individuals, I decided to leave. I also went through a divorce. Story 26. A friend left the group after becoming unreliable and overly sensitive. A member confronted them about it, and they reacted intensely and left. Story 27. A small supporters group for a local soccer team had a de facto leader who rebranded it, but it was a failure. The president never showed any interest, and the leader eventually got a girlfriend and became unavailable. One by one, people left the group chat. The last straw for me was when the leader promised to celebrate my birthday with me but canceled for his girlfriend. By this time, many attendees either stopped going to games or joined other established supporters groups. When I left the group chat, only half of the members remained. Story 28. I didn't want to leave. I had worked there for 15 years, winning awards and steadily getting promoted. After COVID-19, staffing levels changed, and I was overwhelmed with work. My boss received a promotion, but they were not ready to fill his role. They gave me a small bump in pay, but not the position I had worked for. I did my job and his for about 18 months, and my health started to decline due to the workload and working conditions. Finally, they approached me and said they had decided to fill the position and that I could apply, but they would be considering other candidates. I understood that not getting the position was reasonable, as it was a large role in a big organization and would have been my first experience in that capacity, if they had been honest from the start. In the end, I found a new job with a company in the role I had been seeking at my previous job. I still feel somewhat betrayed, though. My previous boss always emphasized his code. Yet he knew I was unwell and chose to work me to the point of exhaustion. After about a year at the new job, working under reasonable conditions, I was able to return to full health. Story 29. I realized in mid-2024 that I was always the first person to text or call friends, so I decided to stop doing that and see what happens. Turns out the friend I've known the longest seems unable to text or call. We haven't spoken in months, and I guess we never will again. Sad, but not really. Story 30. I used to be part of an online radio station. It was all volunteer work and catered to a few gaming platforms. I had a good time with it, and we tried to promote various charities, do fundraisers, and generally perform humanitarian work using the platform. During the first presidency of Donald Trump, there were many protests in the United States, particularly focusing on police brutality, over-militarization, and racial inequalities, such as the Black Lives Matter movement. I petitioned for the station to raise money and awareness in support of these movements. It became apparent shortly thereafter how right-leaning many of the senior members of the station were. They made some concerning statements in the name of staying politically neutral that made me realize they had no understanding of what neutrality meant. After considerable effort, I finally got them to agree to a promotion to raise awareness for some of the issues. I was pleased about it and went live on the air. During the first ad break, I began reading the blurb they put on the website that would direct listeners to a donation page. The first line in the blurb contained offensive content. I was shocked and stopped halfway through the line. I criticized the station on the air and left. Story 31. It was a charity and I served on the board. After a few years, the board's focus shifted from the charity's purpose to the egos of a couple of members, and I had enough, so I resigned. Story 32. I joined a mommy meetup group that was supposed to be for our kids to get together, but devolved into a rotating wine bar. I became frustrated when we were invited out for dinner and specifically asked about bringing kids, which they confirmed. We were the only couple who brought our child. The other parents decided they wanted to go bar hopping, and we declined since we had our child with us. One of the dads then complained, "Next time get a babysitter." What? This was supposed to be a playgroup for our kids. If I wanted to hang out with a self-absorbed trust fund baby, I wouldn't. We did meet a really nice couple we've remained friends with over a decade later and another nice couple who unfortunately moved back to Japan. But we still keep in touch, so it wasn't all bad. However, the rest of that group was toxic. Story 33. A friend, now a former friend, made an inappropriate joke at an inappropriate time. When confronted, he became upset and demanded apologies. Other members of the group were indifferent. I realized I am not 19 anymore and decided to find some normal friends. People I had been missing out on because I had stayed too long with those who belong in the past. Story 34. One of the women decided that our friend's baby shower was the day she would completely ignore my existence, making it really awkward and uncomfortable for me. There was a small group within the larger group that were the popular girls, and once I was cast out by one of them, everything became really awkward. I still see some of them at parties as long as the others aren't there. Story 35. I had to cut many people out of my life. The arguing and negativity are not enjoyable to be around. Story 36. I ended my friendship with my best friend several years ago when he refused to acknowledge or talk to my girlfriend at a dinner he arranged. Story 37. I started a reptile club. Unbeknownst to me, the relationship between guns and reptiles is circular. So I left upon that discovery. Story 38. I have been part of a few Xbox gaming groups. I stopped communicating with them after they became frequently racist upon learning that I am black. These individuals were not just immature youths. We were all in our 30s. Story 39. I know it sounds kind of pretentious, but I always say to myself, life is too short and too precious to waste on things that don't matter. Jobs, toxic people, and similar issues are things you really have to make a choice about. Story 40. I left a Dungeons & Dragons group after the dungeon master decided to spend the first 45 minutes of a session reenacting a conversation between two non-player characters. Finding a time when all 5 of us could meet was already quite challenging, considering we are in our mid-30s, working adults with families. Is this really how you choose to spend our time? Seriously, we are here to roll some dice, not to be an audience for your one-man acting show. Story 41. There was a group on Facebook about a childhood series of books. It started out lovely and positive, then somehow turned into hating on all the woke adaptations of things these days. In the long run, it was good as I quit Facebook too. I have never felt better. Story 42. Selling timeshares was my tipping point. I received a page from the phone book as a contact list. I returned it and walked out. Story 43. I quit clubs because if you're not drunk, it's not as much fun, especially with a friend group that always preferred to pay for a bottle rather than for their own entry. Story 44. The person in charge of the Discord server started going behind our backs, claiming that we were speaking poorly about each other and making insulting remarks. Fortunately, half of us recognized his actions and moved to another server where he was not present. Last I heard, the people who remained with him were unhappy but had no other local friends to spend time with. Story 45. Utter disrespect and dysfunction from bosses and coworkers. I have walked out of many jobs without notice. Story 46. I ended a friendship because it was exhausting. She made bold and blunt statements about my life, disguised as constructive criticism, even though they were unrequested and about things I was content with. When I honestly gave her feedback and potential solutions regarding issues she consistently complained about, I was labeled as judgmental. For instance, she would say that all the men she dated just wanted sex while she wanted a relationship. I suggested she wait to have sex with them until she got to know them better instead of just inviting them over to hang out. We had a significant argument but eventually moved past it. A few weeks later, something similar occurred. This time, it was about her car. Her car was damaged but still functional, and she said she would ride it until the wheels fell off. She was applying for a job that, if she got it, would allow her to afford a new car. I asked her if she would get a new one if she got the job, and she said no. I replied, "That's understandable. Ride it until the wheels fall off." She lost her temper and I was done. Story 47. I had a mostly male group that played ultimate frisbee after school. I invited more people, and one of the guys became possessive over a girl I invited. Then the girl started spreading rumors that I was jealous of her, so I stopped hanging out with them. They dated for a while, but nobody talks anymore. Story 48. I distanced myself from a friend group because they supported individuals with problematic views and defended a content creator facing credible sexual abuse allegations. It was an unacceptable combination. Story 49. I used to watch Asmongold for the World of Warcraft content. I can't pinpoint the tipping point, but it's not what it used to be, that's for sure. Story 50. I left the Democratic Party after it began advocating for censoring people's language. Story 51. The start of the tipping point for me was when I, along with 3 others in a gaming group, got cast out of the group. This group was both online and in person. I was cast out because I arrived at the wrong place and the wrong time. The other 3 were cast out because no one really liked playing games with them. Most of the group played League of Legends, while the 3 others preferred first-person shooter games. I bounced between both groups, but after being cast out of the friend group, I stopped playing League as much. The tipping point for me occurred over the course of 2.5 to 3 years. After being cast out of that gaming group, only 2 members checked in on us regularly, as they were engaged in their own activities beyond gaming that the 4 of us also enjoyed, such as shooting guns, building Warhammer figurines, and camping. I encountered some of the guys from that group around the 1-year mark since we all hung out in the same areas, but they consistently ignored me when I waved or walked past me without acknowledging me, as if they considered themselves superior. The actual tipping point was when I learned from the 2 guys who were between the League of Legends group and the Outcast group that the gaming group had disbanded because 2 members became emotionally invested over a League game. The others in that group were essentially collateral damage, and they exchanged some harsh words. While I continued to frequent the same areas at the time, the guys who had snubbed me attempted to befriend me again over the course of 2.5 to 3 years. They did not approach me at the same time, but each time I responded similarly. They weren't my friends anymore, and the only reason they were part of my life was that we lived in the same town and frequented the same areas. If they wanted to socialize in those areas, I would not stop them, but I also did not want to engage with them at all. I moved out in 2023 due to a work promotion, but I still return to my hometown at least once a year around Christmas to spend time with my friends and family. If the guys who snubbed me are nearby, I'll give them a polite nod, but I do not engage in conversation with them while I am there. Story 52. In the club, a member would give a brief presentation, and then the others, who were friends, would eat lunch and gossip. It focused on sexual assault prevention, but nothing was done to spread the information around campus. Story 53. I recently stopped hanging out with a friend group because one of the guys decided to start dating someone who looks like me. He asked me out several years ago, and I turned him down, which never caused too much awkwardness. However, he has recently started bringing his new girlfriend to every gathering, and we are just too similar. We have the same name, are both blonde, have similar hair length, wear glasses, and have the same build and height. Since they are always there, hanging out with that group is now extremely uncomfortable. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.